Welcome back to All About America's Team, brought to you by Delahanty Media. It is Victory Wednesday as the Cowboys were able to get the victory over the Giants. We are now sitting at myself, Ray Mickens at 2-1, and Owen DeChico 0-3. Just not shocking for some, not so shocking for others. But anyway, welcome
Just
back to
happy
the
to be here.
just welcome back to the episode. We got a lot to dive into. As promised, we will dive into the Bengals game at the beginning before moving on into some breakdowns of the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys last Monday. But first, as always, Owen, take it away. What do you got for any updates or breaking news?
So Dak, they're waiting for his recently hand or thumb that went under surgery to the swelling to go down, and then after that they'll kind of go into the next steps of him being able to throw a football, and no one really knows when he's going to be back, just because you have to wait until the swelling to go down to kind of make a timetable. And also Michael Gallup, a lot of people thought that he was going to be playing against the Giants, but he only practiced a few times last week, and he said that he wasn't mentally ready yet to go in. And especially with Chris Godwin going up against the Cowboys week 1 and then being injured the last few weeks, he said that really made him reevaluate his confidence in himself, because the last thing he wanted to do was step out there and then pull something or re-aggravate his recently torn ACL. So I'm glad that they decided to sit him, and hopefully he can come back against Washington or even go up against the Rams in 2 weeks. But I think also Jaron Curse should be able to play this week, as well as McGovern. Who knows if Jason Peters won that job, but we'll kind of go into Jason Peters a little later in the show. But looks like besides Dak, everyone else should be having at least limited practice this week.
Yeah, and going on the Michael Gallup spiel, I think as long as the Cowboys prove they do not need him in the game to win and be successful, I think he should take as much time as he needs. And if we can get through Washington with a win without him, that would be great. And pencil in on the calendar for the matchup versus the Rams as his debut. That's the best case scenario for me. Cowboys typically don't rush players back either, so if they're winning without him and don't necessarily need him, then that would be great.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
I definitely agree with that.
yeah. So is that about it with the news? We can just dive right into the Bengals.
Of course.
All right. Well, as promised, about 2 weeks late. Here's our Bengals game breakdown. Cowboys were able to get the victory over the Bengals, and it was a very, very interesting day for sure. The Bengals offense, which everyone thought, including me, were going to run laps around the Dallas Cowboys secondary. They were not able to do that, but that was mainly because of our pass rush. We took advantage of um, the inconsistent at best Bengals offensive line. Micah Parsons had a field day, 2 sacks, and there were a lot of other players who were able to get to Joe Burrow as well, sacking him 7 times and really stalling a bunch of drives just by getting to Joe Burrow quickly and forcing him to either throw it away or take him to the turf. That was, my opinion, the difference in the football game, where the Cowboys were able to pressure Joe Burrow and the Bengals were unable to get to Cooper Rush very often. Also, not to steal everything, but also think the balance of the offense was great. We haven't seen that much balance in a long time. That was a main impact, again, being able to run the football with Zeke and Tony Pollard effectively, getting 3 to 4 yards to carry, and really being able to just kind of milk the clock as much as they could, knowing they only scored their 2 touchdowns early and then had some points later on in the game to ultimately seal it. But holding the Bengals to only 1 offensive touchdown was huge, and then just kind of milking the clock at the end and getting that game deciding field goal. So I'm just going to kind of pencil in that win to the defense. Cooper Rush did get his fourth quarter game winning drive, improving him to 2-0 in his career with 2 game winning drives. But really the hats off to the defense. They're really the main factor as to why the Cowboys were able to get that victory.
Yeah, for sure. The defense definitely. It was funny because during the offseason when Lyle Collins was cut, everyone was like, "Oh my goodness! Like you cut your top right tackle for a bum and steal." And Micah Parsons had Lyle Collins turning around. Basically, was in. It was hard to see as Collins, who was with Dallas for so many years, you see him get beat at basically every play by Micah. Um, my only issue with this game is that at halftime it was 17-3, and they only won 20-17. And granted, a big reason why the game was so close was because of the Dalton Schultz fumble. But I really would have liked to see more urgency coming out of Dallas at halftime because 17-3 is great, but at that point you still have another 2 quarters left to play, and the game is nowhere near being done. So hopefully in the future, if Dallas does ever go into halftime leading by multiple scores, they'll be able to continue playing at a high level. Because if for all we know, if after that first drive by Dallas, the Bengals could have clicked and they could have easily beat Dallas by multiple scores just because Dallas was not it wasn't really a lot of urgency in the second half. Um, But yeah, my other thing that I wanted to say about this game was that going into it, a lot of people were saying how, like Ray, you said that Bengals were going to win by a lot and that Dallas didn't really have a shot. And then it's funny because after that game, like now people are like, oh yeah, like the Bengals, like are they going to have a Super Bowl like second year slump? And it's just I wish for like teams in general, um like the energy that like the hype that you give them in the beginning going into the week, you keep that same level of hype going out. Um, just because the Bengals lost doesn't mean that the Bengals aren't gonna be able to figure things out. Their offensive line, they have a lot of new pieces. Um, it's difficult for any new unit to be able to play well against one of the top defensive lines. And even Lyle Collins said that's one of the best, if not the best, defensive line we'll go up against this year. So they're only going to get better because of it. Um, so I wish that people would not kind of give up on teams like that because just because if the Bengals did win, the Bengals didn't look all that great. And if the Bengals were able to pull out a win, I don't. If they did keep the same type of things they were saying going about how great they were and everything, I didn't really think they played up to that level. But they have Jamar Chase and they have a great team around them, and they'll be able to figure it out. Besides those, like few little things, I thought Dallas played well, but there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, and just to kind of quickly touch on both of those before we move on. As for the starting off slow in the second half, I do believe, and a lot of people, a lot of talking heads who are much smarter than me, they've said that was due to kind of a little bit more playing scared, trying to milk the clock, not wanting to turn the ball over with a backup quarterback in. I think their mindset after getting 2 quick touchdowns and holding the Bengals to 3 points in the first half. I assume, and it showed on the field that in the locker room there was a conversation that was made or that was had. Like, let's just keep playing great defense. Let's milk the clock. If we score, great. If we don't, we're milking clock, and let's get out of here. And ultimately, that was a good game plan because they won. And really, the Bengals only scored, I believe, they might have had 2 touchdowns, but they scored a late touchdown to tie it, and then Cooper Rush led the field goal drive to ultimately win. So the Bengals never led in this game. They tied it up very briefly at the end, other than starting the game tied 0-0. So ultimately, I mean, it would have been great if they were to score a touchdown in the second half, but I don't think they were running plays to score. They were just kind of running to get out of the game, and maybe that shifts if Prescott's in. We don't really know. But that was my opinion on that. And then as to the whole mindset of people switching up their opinions on teams based on one victory. I mean, you kind of did the same thing week 1 after the Bucks game. So you're basically just kind of trying to slowly climb down the ladder from that and move your way back into the swing of things. But I mean, that's okay. I just wanted to mention that. But also, I mean, with the Cowboys, especially if the Cowboys beat a good team, that's going to happen a lot. There's going to be excuses made. Oh, the Bengals are actually not that good, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, really, all you have to really say is the Cowboys were able to get to Burrow, pressure him, sack him, and that really stalled the Bengals offense, which is a lot of big plays down the field. And if you can, bust up those plays by getting to the quarterback quickly, then they're not going to be able to hurt you deep. So Bengals, they have a kind of shaky defense. We're not really sure how they're going to do. Offensive line has been suspect for years, still is suspect. So I ultimately think they're going to figure it out. But Cowboys just got him at the perfect time early on in the year, I think.
Yeah, I do agree. And also, I did not expect Dallas to come out as poorly as they did against the Bucks, and also 2, for Dak to break something happened to his thumb. So yes, I thought Dallas was going to have a good record. Didn't really think they were going to make the playoffs or anything like that. But obviously, all of my predictions for the playoffs are poor. The Saints aren't looking all that great. The 49ers look pretty bad. So I'm gonna chalk all those up to L's. But hopefully Dallas can figure it out. But I don't really think that if they continue this type of trajectory that they're on right now, I don't really foresee much. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So anything else about the Joe Burrow led Bengals you would like to touch upon?
Only thing I have to say about them is they're going to look amazing in their wideouts on tomorrow.
The white jerseys will look great. That's just the first time that they're debuting. They're debuting them tomorrow night, right? Okay.
Yep. And
that'll be exciting.
That's why I'm picking them, because there's no way they're losing in those jerseys.
Well, the Dolphins, Waddle's on the injury report, so is Tua. So who really knows what'll happen? But going into the Giants game, the Giants game was a game that I expected it to be more on the low scoring side. But just quarter to quarter was not really. I did think that the Giants were going to win by 10, but I did not think that it was going to be a shootout. So just on a quarter to quarter basis, I was either like pleasantly surprised or more on the shocked side. So Ray, what were some of your thoughts coming out of that game?
Well, they executed what I expected them to, and how I kind of drew up how the Cowboys were going to win. They were very balanced again, running the football. They ran a lot of plays to Tony Pollard and Zeke, and whenever they had big runs, it was based on a nice little creativity, spreading out the defense and then running motion handoffs to Pollard. That worked very well, got them a huge game. And then really ultimately, I thought this was Cooper Rush's best game coming as a starter, better than the Minnesota game. He didn't throw for as many yards, but his command was great. Poise was great. Made a lot of very big-time decisions and plays. And really, ultimately, what impressed me the most was the Cowboys' defense. They were on top of Daniel Jones basically every play. They didn't get to him every time, but they pressured him over 70% of the time he dropped back to pass, and put him on the ground over 5 times. DeMarcus Lawrence, he had his best game in 6 years. He was going up against Evan Neal, not saying much. Evan Neal looked pathetic. Not to take anything away from DeMarcus Lawrence, but that was just kind of what he was. Those were the cards he was dealt. He executed, put Daniel Jones on the ground 3 times. Really nice to see someone else step up other than Micah Parsons on the defensive line. And really shows how great they can be if they have everyone stepping up and getting to the quarterback. Once again, running back or the running defensive line when it comes to the running game, they gave up that one big play to Saquon, and Saquon took it to the house. And really, that was the turning point of the game where it could have gone 2 ways. I remember Owen texted me after that play and said, "Game over, Cowboys are done." And I think I responded with, "Relax, there's still plenty of time left." Maybe I said terrible defense, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But I was thinking there's still plenty of time. And from that play on, the Cowboys outscored the Giants 17-3, scored 17 unanswered points, 2 long drives, 1 touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb. And Cooper Rush got his 3rd game-winning drive and 3rd win. So ultimately, what I've seen from Cooper Rush is that he's not going to be spectacular like Josh Allen or Mahomes or Herbert or Lamar Jackson, but he's going to make the plays when they need to be made, and he's going to if he gets down in a very small sample size, but if it's a 1-score game or if they have a position to go and win, he's perfect in those situations. So that impresses me. I like that a lot. I had a lot of fun watching the Cowboys on Monday, and that's all I really care about. But ultimately, just really quickly, my offensive MVP for the game was Cooper Rush, and then my defensive MVP was DeMarcus Lawrence. So stop the presses. I did put DeMarcus Lawrence as the MVP of something.
Yeah, I was. I shared the same defensive MVP as you. Just a few things. Terrence Steele played really well. He did not give up pressure. And then Tyler Smith, he did have 2 penalties. He had a holding, and then I believe he had a false start. But besides that, he was on the toss on 3rd and 10 to Zeke, I believe it was, and Tyler Smith, he was mauling people, and that was really good to see.
When I watched back the game just an hour or so ago, every time they had long, anytime there were plays where Pollard or Zeke got into the second level, Tyler Smith was the lead blocker. So, I mean, I know it's still early, but I'm willing to say I was wrong about Tyler Smith and give him his due. And I think that, I mean, especially playing left tackle, I wish he wouldn't have even been practicing at left guard, because who knows how much better he would be if he spent the entire offseason running left tackle. So if he's playing this well through the first 3 games, then I can't imagine how well he would be playing if he had a full offseason at left tackle. But, I mean, it is still early. A lot of defensive pass rushes, or a lot of good pass rushers that are coming that he'll have to go up against. So we'll see how he does there. But, I mean, he's been doing very well in the run blocking and pass blocking. And if he could just kind of keep the penalties at a minimum, I think he'll have a really solid year.
Yeah, for sure. He's even in college in Tulsa, he was known for his run blocking ability. But I think his pass protection has gotten better as the days go on. And going back to what you said about Daniel Jones being pressured, he was pressured 35 times against the Cowboys defense. And funny enough, Dallas in that game got more pressures than the Saints have had in the past 3 games, which I thought was pretty funny. Other little tidbit, regardless of the hate that this coaching staff gets, and it deserves a lot of hate, Mike McCarthy is 7-7 in games without Dak Prescott. And I think that when Jason Garrett in 2015, when Tony went down, we were just watching to see what would happen. There was never really a thought, oh yeah, Dallas is going to win this week. There were a bunch of games where they were in, but it was never something like this. And you could either say that, well, Cooper Rush is better than any quarterback they've had, or that Dallas had in 2015, or you could say that it's the coaching staff, regardless of whatever way you want to go down. Being 7-7 without your $40 million quarterback, I think is something to be appreciative of, even though there's probably a laundry list of things to be negative about. In Dallas quarterback fashion, Cooper Rush off play action was 11 for 15 for 158 yards. And then you had the big drop by CD, which after that drop, I was stunned, just because especially when you're the number one wide receiver, along with wearing number 88 for Dallas, having a big drop like that was shocking. But thankfully, he redeemed himself as the game went on, which is something that I was pleasantly surprised by. They used him a lot in the second half after the Giants kind of came back, and to be able to see CD really put up wide receiver one numbers and really have this was like his coming out party. Like, granted against the Giants, but it really showed that he is. I think this was probably the first game with him as the bona fide number one that he was able to really step up and do something. And then my MVPs were CeeDee Lamb for offense and DeMarcus Lawrence for defense.
Well, if it makes you, I mean, I guess the common denominator was I had CD in my top 3. However, Tony Pollard was ahead of him. So if he was in the top 3 for MVP, and then but he still had 2 people ahead of him. But I just want to go back to that 2015 comparison that you brought up. I disagree with it, mainly on the sense that there were a lot of games that year where the Cowboys either had the lead or were in position to win, and they just lacked that one. They lacked the ability, whether it be from the quarterback or on the defense, to close. I mean, the Saints game, they got into overtime. Garrett Gilbert played well. They're playing Drew Brees, and CJ Spiller took the ball and ran it, housed it for 80 yards in overtime. But really, what separates this football team from that football team is just the backup quarterback just executing at the end of the game and getting points and sealing games. Whereas, Matt Castle, I'm not even going to throw him in there because he played terrible. I
love Matt Castle. I always look forward to those games where he would it'd be a quarterback scramble or something like that, and he'd get hit and his helmet would be off, and he'd motion for the first down, and that made the whole game for me. When he did like once or twice, but it made the whole season worthwhile.
Well, I remember Matt Castle from when we lost to the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets, and one of those teams is still abysmal. The other one is actually good now. But yeah, so really the Cowboys in 2015, I think if I recall, there were 6 to 8 games where they either had the lead or were down by a possession with a chance to win, and they were able to win one of those games where Deshaun Jackson muffed a punt where he was with Washington, and we got the recovery and kicked the field goal. So really just lacking that one person to make that specific play to ultimately win. The difference here is we're taking advantage and scoring points when we're either down by a score or leading or tied. And then also just the defense is just miles ahead of the 2015 defense. It's not even close. So whereas in those scenarios, it was kind of a hope that the defense stops the offense and relying on the run game, whereas this team is relying on the defense and make big plays to win. And I think that they're just being able to execute very well in those close game scenarios.
No, all I meant by that point was that in those games, at least for me, I wasn't really expecting Dallas to win. Yeah, like I said, and like you said, there were a lot of close games, but it was never really like, oh yeah, like Dallas really has a chance to win this. It's just, how is either Dallas going to mess this up, or how is the other team going to play well? But I just by that point, I just meant that like week to week, there is, even though I don't see it, you do, because you obviously your picks are more correct than me. You see a glimmer of hope when in 2015 there wasn't really one, at least in my opinion. Um, but, but yeah, that's all that I meant by by that point. But are there any plays or any tidbits from this game that kind of give you a sense of hope going into the rest of the season or going into future seasons or anything like that?
I am very basically just how well the offensive line played. They were able to. I'll dive into this a little bit more later, but just a little. I'll just stay on the running side. They were able to run the ball very well, and Zeke was that power back, and then Tony Pollard brought the burst and had a lot of really big runs that really shifted momentum and got the Cowboys into Giants territory. And they were able to score. They were able to score multiple points in those scenarios. And ultimately, I mean, when the Cowboys got into the red zone, they cashed in every single time. That was very nice to see, getting 2 touchdowns. Yeah, 2 touchdowns and 3 touchdowns. How many touchdowns did they score? 23
They
points.
scored 2
They
touchdowns
had
and
six.
then three field goals, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Every time they got in the red zone, they cashed in with touchdowns or field goals. They weren't stopped or had a penalty to push them back or missed field goal or anything like that. So it was nice to see them getting points when they got into the red zone. The kicking game has been shockingly, very surprisingly well. Maher has kicked very well, other than the deep 58-yarder. He's made a lot of field goals, and he's really not missed any extra points. So we've gotten points from our special teams, which was a suspect. And then just ultimately the long term, the thing that gives me hope long term is the defense. When Dak went down week 1, I said that the defense was going to keep the Cowboys in every single game that they played. You do not share the same sentiment as me, but that's okay. I mean, it's hard to really hope for the Cowboys to do anything without Dak. But, I mean, the defense has kept them in every game. They've limited every team that they play to under 20 points allowed, which is which is a huge accomplishment when your offense doesn't have their starting quarterback, has a lot of inexperience at wide receiver, and had some question marks on the offensive line going into the year. So the fact that they've been even in the position to win games at the end in the fourth quarter is a huge hats off to the defense for getting them in that position.
Yeah, definitely. The defense, especially the pass rush, has been really good. I'm glad that Dallas made the free agent moves they made because Dante Fowler has had impact. Obviously, bringing back Dorrance Armstrong has looked really good as he's had a really good 2-game stretch. Obviously, Micah, who didn't really have a great game on the stat sheets, he was disrupting everything. He was in the backfield for basically every play, and the attention that was brought to him allowed people like DeMarcus Lawrence and other players on the defensive line to be able, and linebackers to be able to get home and create sacks. Also, Donovan Wilson had a sack, so just a lot of good came out of the defense. I think that Dallas has a very big like bend but don't break mentality, which they've had for several years, which is they'll kind of give up some plays every now and then, but in the red zone or 30 to 40 yards, they'll kind of buckle down and get their stuff together, which is good to see.
I mean, I see where you're coming from on that. I don't really think they're a bend but don't break defense at all anymore. They haven't. I don't. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they haven't given up They've given up one big play in the secondary this entire 3-game stretch, and that was in week 1 to Julio Jones on the deep ball from Brady. Other than that, the only big plays they've given up have been in the running game. The secondary has done a great job limiting big plays, where that was kind of their weakness last year, where teams were getting a lot of big plays. That I think that comes from the defensive line getting home a lot more consistently. You're not going to give up a ton of big plays in the secondary when you're sacking you're in the backfield in less than 2 or 3 seconds. So they I mean, the Giants had 6 points for most of the entirety of the first half. And then they had the one big run to Barkley. Other than that, they had one additional field goal. And we're in the red zone once, I believe, or maybe twice, and had to settle for field goals. So Cowboys, they just done a really good job of getting off the field on third down and getting teams into 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10 plus, and just kind of getting off the field in those scenarios just because they've been able to get pressure. But they're not playing like they would where teams would go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plays down to the 20, 30-yard line and then get a stop and force a field goal. So I'm just very impressed. Whereas, I mean, just an example, like a 2014 defense was that bend but don't break mentality where they would get off the field on third down. This defense is a lot more aggressive. They're getting sacks, pushing offenses back, forcing punts, getting off the field quickly, and that's just very exciting, especially because really just one player has been able to impact the entirety of the defense extremely well.
What I meant by that was there were a few times in the Bengals game where the Bengals were in the red zone and they had, I believe it was 2 opportunities to score, but then Micah and company sacked Burrow several times, which kept Dallas in the game. And that's kind of my definition of bend but don't break. It's not obviously it's if a team gets up a 70-yard touchdown, but then is able to keep them to a field goal. But also, in my opinion at least, is wherever they start, if they're consistently getting first downs and bringing, if they're not stopping the team from getting third downs and end up getting back to first down. If they keep on consistently succeeding, and then they get into the red zone, and then the defense is able to stop them. But that's what I meant. Like you said, Dallas hasn't really given up many big plays besides the Julio, and then obviously the run with Saquon, which I hope is being shown today in practice about how it is being shown today in the film room about how about how to tackle correctly, because there were several missed tackles from Donovan Wilson and several other people. So hopefully they were able to get that tackling situation under wraps. But that's all I meant by the bend but don't break, is that there were several times in the Bengals game, and then even here where they stopped in the field goals when the drive looked promising.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think 2 of the 3 Giants field goals came from 40 yards out or more.
Yeah, it was very, very good on, I believe the kick was Graham Gano. Very good on him for being able to knock those down. And also, like you said, I like what you said about Brett Maher. He's looked really good. Besides that, 59-yarder, he's looked really good.
I'm not going to hold that against him. So
yeah, not at all. It's difficult for any kicker to make that unless your name is Justin Tucker. So
I agree with that. But any other overall thoughts on the game before we dive into a little bit more of a controversial portion of this video?
No. By all means, start.
All right. Well, so I'll let you set the stage for this one, and I'll let you go first, and then I'll kind of bring up the rear.
Okay. So yesterday and earlier today, Ray and I were kind of talking about the game, kind of talking about what we wanted to talk about for this episode. And one thing that I brought up was that there were several times in the game, at least from what I was looking at, and maybe I missed something, was that it looked like the game plan over the last 2 weeks has kind of changed from when Dak was playing, at least in recent memory. It felt like a lot of the personnel that Kellen Moore was throwing on the field was with multiple tight ends and a lot of pass protection, which allowed Cooper Rush to have a clean pocket. So Ray and I were talking about that, and there was a article by David Hellman. He's a really good Dallas reporter. He's also on Fox with Emmanuel Ocho and I think LaShawn McCoy. So every now and then those are kind of exciting. LaShawn McCoy thinks that Cooper Rush is the next franchise quarterback for Dallas. And I believe Emmanuel Ocho, who was an Eagle, kind of feels the same way. But I thought that I'll say like my main statement, and then Ray, you can take over. I think that last night, if you put Dak in there, and if he's not coming off a broken thumb, if he's healthy, I guess if you want to say week 1, if you put Dak in there, I do think that the score is a lot. Dallas scores a lot more points than they did against the Giants with Cooper Rush. I think that's all I kind of wanted to say. And then also I just thought that the game plan changed a lot with Cooper Rush and just personnel they were throwing out there. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And then Ray, you are more than welcome to share your point of view now.
Yeah. Well, before I dive in, just a quick point. The Dallas Cowboys, I know this is if and or but it's very clear that if CeeDee Lamb did not drop the easiest catch of all time, he would have walked into the end zone. That would tack on another 7. That would bring the score to 30-16. And then the blatant PI in the first quarter, that was no call. I don't know how there wasn't a flag. That would have put the Cowboys at the 1-yard line where Zeke would have ran it in, or Pollard, either one for a touchdown, bringing the final score to 37-16. So, in my opinion, that would count as a blowout. But I mean, that just goes to show that with 2 plays being different, it would have been that blowout that you would have been looking for. But yeah, going into the personnel. When Owen told me that, I immediately said, well, let me just go back and watch the tape because I can, thanks to my investment of, not to give them a plug, but NFL Premium allows me to watch back every game. And I was able to watch a condensed version, get through the entirety of the game in 55 minutes, count out every personnel from every play. And what I found was very interesting. The Cowboys did line up in a lot of 2 tight end personnel with 6 to even 9 blockers. But most of the time they were in those 7 to 8 blocking fronts, they were running the football. So they would stack the offensive line, and they would hand off to either Zeke or run Pollard in from a motion or toss it to him, either one. And what the article did not mention was that the Cowboys did go back to their traditional 4 wide receiver sets, 1 running back, 5 offensive linemen, and they were able to block and protect Cooper Rush very well. What I got from the game plan from watching it back is the Cowboys were really adamant on keeping a balanced running formation. One second. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Loud roommates. Where was I?
Talking about personnel and
oh right, yeah. Yeah, they were able to block efficiently when they would line up in the five linemen, spread them out and throw. A lot of when they were throwing it in six lineman fronts, 7 lineman fronts, There are multiple swing passes to CeeDee Lamb or Pollard, play action runs. And what it looked like they were trying to do, which is what I believe every offensive good play caller does, is they were running different plays from the same look. So they ran 28 to 35 running plays from five offensive lineman sets, 6 offensive lineman sets, 7 offensive line sets. And they'd show the same 2 wide receiver split out, or they'd have 3 wide receivers split out. And they were either running it, throwing swing passes, play actioning. It was just making it very difficult for the Giants to predict what was coming. Whereas in the past, with the quarterback you're paying $40 million to throw the football, it's very easy to get pass happy, to line up in 4 wide receivers, one running back, blocking only 5 offensive linemen, and allowing the defenses to go out there and blitz you while keeping their DB front. But what they were forcing the Giants to do was to lining up to stop the run, and they're able to play action very effectively off that. But when the Cowboys were lining, and honestly, to be honest, I believe that running 5 offensive linemen and 1 tight end in there to block is not uncommon. A lot of teams do that in a lot of different scenarios, especially when they line up in the pistol, which is what the Cowboys mainly did when they were throwing with 6 linemen, was running in that pistol. They were able to block him very effectively. When there were 5 offensive linemen, they were able to block very effectively. And then when they had 7 offensive linemen, it was mainly just for quick passes, swing passes, or a quick swing to the running back. So what I saw, they were not designing they were not. I mean, obviously they were trying to block Cooper Rush. Or block the Giants and protect Cooper Rush. That's a given. But they were not. Kellen Moore did not design the game plan and stack it just to protect Cooper Rush on the passing game. There's a lot more overall design by what he did. And ultimately, it's what any good play caller would do, is design your passes and make them look like runs, make your runs look like passes. And what I think, and I'm not going to, give Kellen Moore all this praise for being competent and calling plays that look like other plays, because what they've done in the past with Dak is they try to throw from the same formation every single time, and it gets very predictable. So my hope in the future is that the Cowboys stick with this when Dak comes back, not get pass happy, not think that Dak can do something he has proven he can't do, which is throw a ton of times and be consistent, and just keep this balanced running game like the West Coast offense in San Francisco and Green Bay, and basically everywhere they run a West Coast offense where they design pass plays and run plays. So that was my take from it. I did not think that the main design of running 7 people at offensive line was to protect Cooper Rush. It was just to disguise pass plays and run plays, as many good offensive coordinators do.
That's fair. I saw several clips of the tight end Ferguson that was drafted from the 4th round, and Hendershot blocking Thibodeau and just trying to chip him. So yeah, so it was kind of like a block and release, like mentioned earlier. But I do think that when Dallas had Kayvon Thibodeau as their number 1 prospect, and there are reports that if Thibodeau fell out of the top 10, they were going to go and trade for him. So in my opinion, at least, it makes the most sense that if, in your eyes, the best pass rusher you're facing, you're going to want to give them more attention, even if you have Tyron Smith, because if you respect them that much, especially with your backup quarterback on your blind side, that's just not something that I think is all that smart. But yeah, I like what you said about changing up the specific play, but the same formation. There was one play in the game where, like you mentioned, where Pollard kind of did a swivel around Zeke, and they didn't give it to him. And then another play, a few drives later, which led to the big CeeDee Lamb catch that then led to his touchdown. So I personally do think that some of it was due to the defensive line and wanting to keep him upright, which is why Cooper Rush wasn't sacked, because there was so much protection. But also, yeah, just because of the game plan and how they went into the game. But also your point about Dak not really being able to throw the ball consistently and win games. Uh, Dak's he's not one of the best quarterbacks, but he has shown that there are times where he can if he has to throw a good amount of times in a game. And obviously, for the next episode, if this is a topic that you want to talk about in the future, and this is not me saying this is like a Dak fanboy or anything, but there are times where he's been able to put the team on his back and end up winning the game, or putting them in a good position to. But I think every quarterback and their team will be better with running the ball. You look at Green Bay, who have two top running backs, and teams, unless you're Tom Brady, who for a few years didn't really have a great running game, but still was able to win. Even great quarterbacks, they do need a running game. So I'd obviously have to get specific game to talk about where Dak had to throw the ball a lot and then ended up winning it. And now that's not something you'd want to see with your quarterback throwing 50, 60 times. Like I think Justin Herbert threw like 60 something, or threw the ball 60 times this past week, and they ended up not winning. So yeah, so throwing the ball a lot is not the key to success. It may be a few times, but consistently is not the key to success. So I think that goes for every quarterback, not just specifically Mr. Prescott. But I do think that for this whole year, he's not going to be able to throw the ball well for at least the first 2 or 3 weeks. So running the ball, because Cooper Rush against the Bengals threw the ball 31 times. So if Dak can throw like 20 times and then hopefully complete most of those, maybe throw a little bit less than that, then that'd be able to work, because Dak didn't look great week 1, and he's coming off of this is now going into 2 weeks of him not being able to throw the ball. I don't really foresee him suddenly being great at throwing.
Well, I mean, this is kind of this is almost breaking news, because after week 1, you were adamant on getting rid of Prescott and replacing him. So the fact that you are now defending him again is you are back on the train.
No, I'm not defending him. I'm just saying that I think it's not fair to knock someone for.
I mean, I have a 12 plus game sample size of Dak Prescott being ineffective, of winning when they put a lot on his plate and have transitioned from the run first offense to the pass first offense.
And what 12 games would those be?
All right. So I have Green Bay in the postseason. I have
Green Bay in the postseason.
Green Bay in the postseason.
In 2016, they tried running the ball. They couldn't do it. They were down several scores.
Yes.
And then Dak had to throw the ball, and then they were almost there if it wasn't for a hand of God from Mason Crosby. And it also wasn't for a blown coverage by Byron Jones to allow Cook to be able to catch something that's probably the best catch he's ever had in his whole life.
Were they down? No, they were. How many points were they down again?
They were down like 3 scores going into halftime.
3 scores. So ultimately the defense played off, and then they got some big plays. Aaron Rodgers threw a dumb interception, got them back in the game, and then ultimately they lost. So,
but I believe I can look at it. If I don't have the stats in front of me, but that year in 2016, Dak was not.
They were run first offense. Were run first offense.
So they tried running,
and they were unable to run, and so it got on him to throw, and he was unable to throw effectively in the first half.
He was also a rookie who Mississippi State was not really known At least all the most of the plays that I saw, he was not known for his arm. He was more known for being able to run the ball. At least because how big he was, and sure, he was a good thrower, but like you said, 2016, he was not really known for throwing the ball, and they didn't really ask him to throw the ball that much. And also coming off, that team was, at least in my opinion, the reason why they were so successful was because of their younger players. So for them to have to go into Green Bay in an away game and stink it up for 2 quarters, and then you're asking.
The reason why they were effective was because they had the best offensive line of football and were able to run the ball and destroy everyone in the front and play action very well, which is exactly what the Cowboys did on Monday. Was they ran the ball effectively and they were able to play action well.
But besides 2016, in 2017, you lost. 2017, 2018. As soon as they lost Ron Leary, their whole offensive line went down, and then you had to move. La'el Collins had to move out when Doug Free retired. You had to move La'el Collins out. So then you brought in Ronald Leary, and that offensive line was probably the best when you had Tyron Smith, Ronald Leary, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, and then Doug Free. And then La'el Collins. And then when they lost Ronald Leary, that left guard position was a mess for several years. So yeah, Dallas wants to get into this. It wants to get into this run first offense. But this is the first year in several years where Dallas's offensive line has been consistently good. La'el Collins was not what he used to be after coming into camp hurt several times and his hip being injured and his back. I believe he had, or maybe not back, just his hip. He was a shell of himself. Zach Martin is one of the best offensive linemen. Is probably the best offensive guard, besides Quentin Nelson in the league. Not having a center since Travis Frederick, and yeah, Biotish is good, but he's nowhere near Travis Frederick was. Left guard is still a question mark, and now, as of right now, your left tackle is set in stone right now, but who knows what'll happen over an elongated season. So it's difficult to want to consistently run the ball when your offensive line does not have the ability to. I think that a lot of people, when they look at Dallas, like, oh yeah, they're one of the best offensive lines in the league, which is something that I think people kind of think is, 2016 offensive line's the same. No, it's far from it. Losing your center is one of the worst things that can happen to your football team, besides obviously losing your quarterback. And as soon as Travis Frederick went down and retired because of an autoimmune disease, that whole offensive line went down. You're relying on Zach Martin, who is consistently healthy, and you're also relying on Tyron Smith, who is maybe good for 8 or 9 games a year. And then you're asking La'el Collins at right tackle, who was good, but after his hip was injured, is nowhere near he was. And so, yes, you're obviously going to be relying on your quarterback a lot more when your offensive line is Swiss cheese and cannot run block to save their lives.
That was a great rant. But at the end of the day, you just proved my point that they've had to rely on Prescott more, and he hasn't been able to succeed.
Well, he has. Do you mean regular season or postseason?
Just to give you a couple of games. I'm not going to give you 2016. 26. I will delete the Packers game off of my list. This is 2019. I have the Cowboys. I have the Cowboys against the Saints, Cowboys against the Packers, Cowboys against the Jets, Cowboys against the Vikings, Cowboys against the Bills, Cowboys against the Bears, Cowboys against the Eagles at the end of the week, where the Eagles had basically practice squad receivers, and all Dak had to do was make one play throwing the football, and he could not do it. That was also the game where Amari Cooper set in stone me wanting him gone, where he got benched in a coaching staff led by Jason Garrett, who never benches people. So he might be the first person who's ever gotten benched under Jason Garrett, which is not what you want to be. But anyway, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games from 2019. All I need is 5 more games from that, and I can pull the game against Denver, where he came back off the injury, looked terrible, against the Chiefs, where he also looked very bad. Even though they beat the Giants, that was one of those games where he was unable to be effective throwing the ball against Mike Glennon. He looked very, very bad in that game. 49ers game was not able to throw effectively. I mean, you can say everyone played bad, but he was not able to throw. And ultimately, they lost because they were unable to play well. The Bucks game this year, although not going to really hold that as much against him because but I mean, same offense, same receivers, same line, same running backs, and they were able to do basically nothing. So that's around 10-ish games, just off the top of my head. I know I said 12, my bad, 10. If I were to go back and look from last year, I'm sure I could find a couple as well that I missed. But that's just 2019 through this year, where I pulled 10 games where they've asked him to throw, and they couple of those games they were able to battle back, but were unable to finish. And other of those games they were just unable to do really much of anything on offense when he was throwing. So, I mean, that goes back to my point of he's shown in a lot of sample size where he's inconsistent when they've asked him to throw. Not saying he can't win, just saying he's inconsistent. So when they're able to run the ball like they have been, they should go back to this type of offense where they're running similar plays from the same or different plays from the same formation, making the defense guess, making them stack the box, play action, throw over the top, or spread them out and run the ball. And it's been working very well. And that's just all I'm basically saying based off of rewatching the game and just by studying the formations, because that's what I took off of it. They were disguising plays from the same formation and were able to do it effectively while limiting penalties by having people blocking that are not supposed to block every single play.
Well, yes, I would like to see Dallas change up things and not be the same type of offense every single week. But going into last week, going into last year, Dak against the Buccaneers, in my opinion, surprised a lot of people with his performance coming off of an ankle injury. Going into the Chargers game, which I know you didn't expect Dallas to win that game, and sure, the defense kind of held their own, and you had an interception by Justin Herbert, and you had a sack by Micah Parsons, so sure, I'll give you the defense on that one. Cowboys beat the Eagles by 20 points. Dallas in the second half beats the Panthers, and then Dallas beats the Giants. And then also Dallas beats the Patriots, and then Dak with calf strain. I don't know what it was. Because apparently, there are a lot of reports on the injury of how severe it was. Like you've said, if you have an injury and if you're going to be out there, you should at least be decent. And then Dallas goes into the Vikings game and wins because of Cooper Rush. And then November 7th, the Broncos game.
That's very nice of you to say that it was because of Cooper Rush. It
was Cooper Rush and Amari Cooper. So, and then you go into the Broncos game, and personally, it was an earlier game. Didn't really catch much. I was in church, but after while surveying and seeing what was happening, basically, the Broncos knew exactly what Dallas was going to do. The whole scheme, there was no surprise. So going back to what you were saying about how Dallas was doing different things, that's what I meant. They hadn't really done that much. Their type of motion and surprise week one was a double reverse, which completely blew momentum away. So yes, I would like to see a similar type of game plan to Dak, but don't limit it as much. Dak can do more with the offense, and that's not me saying that I love Dak and that he's this great quarterback, but he has more intangibles because Cooper Rush was an undrafted free agent and Dak was a fourth-round pick. So you'd expect more out of a fourth-round pick than a UDFA, unless your name is Tom Brady or Tony Romo or the other plethora of UDFAs who are great. So then you go into the other games, like the Falcons game, which was not even a game. the Chiefs game, which Dak and company had at least 45 chances to win that game, and they didn't, just because of
Because
vanilla
of who?
offense, because of Dak, and because of the vanilla offense. Because
So I just have a quick question. Why do you think Kellen Moore, other than Mike McCarthy yelling at him, because I don't really that. Why do you think the Cowboys were running pass looks most of the time and throwing the ball a lot?
You mean last week, or you mean sorry,
In general,
Monday,
in
with
general,
Dak?
and since Dak got paid $40 million, 200+ million overall, why do you think the Cowboys have lined up in pass packages with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Cedric Wilson as their receivers? Why do you think that they were doing that?
I
Is it
think that
A because they hate running the ball, or B because they have a quarterback and weapons at wide receiver and thought that they could beat people throwing the ball?
I'll take C. I think that it was because your identity is running the ball. Every team's identity should be running the ball. But
But
when your
every team's identity is not running the ball. The Chiefs' identity is throwing the ball. The Bills' identity is throwing the ball. The
but
Chargers' identity is throwing the ball. The Bucks' identity is
because the
quick.
Bucks haven't had a good running back in years, and also the Chiefs when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a rookie, and when he was good at running the ball, that team. I'm not saying that year they were a run first team, but they had a good running game, which
That was the year that Mahomes threw 60 touchdown
I
passes.
like I said, I am not saying that team became a run first team, but I'm saying that they have not had a good runner since Clyde Edwards-Helaire his rookie year. He
They
just
still have
hasn't
Clyde
been the
Edwards.
same player. He's not
Well,
been the same player.
because they're also a throwing first offense because they had Patrick Mahomes, who is an MVP winner, a Super Bowl MVP winner, and who is one of the most talented, gifted throwers of the football ever. So they're gonna that's their identity is throwing the football, just like with Josh Allen and Herbert, and I mean I would say the Bucks, but that's because the Bucks had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they had Gronk, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones for a game. Like they threw the ball. I mean, they didn't run the ball very well, but they also didn't attempt to run the ball that much. Most of their running consisted of running back checkdowns. So there are a lot of teams who throw the ball more than they run because that's their identity. The Cowboys thought that they were a throwing team, so that's why they threw the ball. But what I'm liking that they're finding out through this situation where they have Cooper Rush as the quarterback, they're realizing that they can be successful throwing the ball and running the ball, and all they have to do is disguise what they're trying to do within the same formation. And what I like is it's super simple because everything that I saw from watching it back is super simple. They're either in the pistol with 7 guys blocking, or they're in the shotgun with 5 guys blocking, and they're able to do the same thing in different formations and always stay one step ahead. And so that's all I'm saying is you're not a passing team. Your quarterback is much better when they're running the ball more than they throw it, and they need to stick to the running game as much as they can because this is showing that they can win because their defense is so good. They just need to run the ball, score touchdowns, and they have to play close games and play close games. But I mean, you just gotta. This team needs to get away from thinking that they're a throwing team and get back to thinking that they need to run the ball, and being a run first team.
Like I said earlier, my statement about the Chiefs was not that because of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had 1,100 yards from scrimmage and started in 13 games, and then year 2 started in 10 games. So he went from 1,100 yards to 646. Now that is either personally, I don't think that if your running back has 1,100 yards in scrimmage, you're going to go into the next year and be like, you know what, guys, we're just not going to run the ball anymore. This is not going to happen. So either he was injured, which I believe he was, or he just was not as effective. So my statement was not that the Chiefs were this run first team. I'm just saying that when you have a good running game, it will only help your team. So that's all that my statement was on that. But um, overall, the offensive line's a lot better this year. So I'd like to assume that
Which is
when Dak,
shocking considering that we thought it was going to be terrible.
you thought it was going to be terrible.
I mean, most of the people thought it was going to be terrible.
Well, there was a big divide in who believed in Tyler Smith and who did not. You fell in the category of people that did not believe in him. I fell in the category of people that did believe in him. And also, I didn't mention this earlier, but my favorite play of the game was the Tony Pollard 45, 47-yard run because Jason Peters closed off the lane and basically was the reason why that it was his first play too, which is pretty cool. But I think I would assume, I obviously don't know this, but a part of the reason why the game plan was simpler was because it was a backup quarterback. Obviously, he's been in the system for several years. I only a year less, maybe two, because he was cut than Dak. But I believe that with the backup, you kind of have to close the playbook down a little bit and dumb it down. And Cooper Rush, he's played well. But yes, I would like to see a similar type of game plan for Dak, especially while he's nursing his thumb. But Zeke for 2017, he was coming in and out of week to week to being injured. So 2017, Dak did not play well. Dak was I would assume the same quarterback, but did not benefit from having as good of an offensive line. So did not benefit from having as good of a running game. So he didn't play all that well. His coming out party, at least in my opinion, was that stretch before he broke his ankle. Yes, the defense did stink, but he was he was throwing the ball a lot, and he was able to come back, albeit not really against great teams, but he was able to put them in a position to be back, and that's the only reason why Dallas beat the Falcons was because of Dak and his arm. Granted, it was the Falcons, and Dallas should not have been down that much to begin with, but whatever that means.
The Cowboys beat the Falcons because the Falcons were unable to recover an onside kick. That
but who put them in a position to kick the onside kick? It was not the running game down multiple possessions. I'll be surprised if it was Tony Pollard and Zeke, because that means that they would have had to go off for like 30, 40-yard touchdowns. It was Dak. They should not have been in that position, but it was Dak. And against the Cleveland Browns as well, when that defense was not playing well, and when Odell Beckham channeled his inner John Elway and was just amazing. Well, you don't remember?
I don't really get the analogy, but I know what you're talking about.
Because
the reverse.
He also had a throwing touchdown.
Proving how great Baker Mayfield is as a quarterback.
So that is what I meant. Channeling his John Elway for throwing it to Jarvis Landry or whoever it was thrown to. But Dak, even though they lost that game, they were in it, and then Dak breaks his ankle against the Giants, and they were in that game as well. He was injured,
and they won that game.
Yes, but who put them in a position to win that game? It was not Andy, because Andy did win the game, but after that, Andy was not. I remember having a conversation with you about Mr. Andy Dalton, and you were like, "Yeah, Andy is going to be the quarterback. Dak's going to lose the job to Mr. Andy Dalton," and then Andy Dalton lost himself the job to Ben DiNucci and to Garrett Gilbert.
I think the reason why Andy Dalton lost the job was because he got concussed.
It was also because he was not playing well.
No, it was because he was hurt. He did not lose the job to Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci. He was concussed
he
for
was
2
concussed,
weeks.
and then he came back, and then he didn't play well. He was concussed, and then he came back and did not play well.
Garrett Gilbert did not. Garrett Gilbert played 1 game as the Cowboys,
and he had a really good game. And he had a really good game that week.
And then the next week, Andy Dalton was the starter again.
And then he did not play well at all that year. And he has not played well. And who knows? He might be the starting quarterback for the Saints in a few weeks. But that whole year was not great. So then Dak last year, he has a good stretch up from the Buccaneers game to the Patriots game. In my opinion, one of the better stretches of his career. Only lost the 1 game against the Bucs. His calf out for 2 weeks. I saw reports that it was a Kevin Durant-like injury. I also saw reports that it was nothing. So who knows? Neither of us know. I no longer trust Dak in the injury department because he said that his thumb was fine. Then we found out that he broke it. So I don't really trust Dak in the injury department. He comes back.
But do you trust Dak as a quarterback?
I trust him more than I trust Cooper Rush. And the one reason why I know Dak was injured for a big part of that year after the calf injury was because, as you and I know, Dak's rookie year before his ankle injury, he ran the ball every now and then. He wasn't just like Lamar Jackson type quarterback, but he had some element of a run game. Do you agree to that? Options. Do you agree?
Yes, he was able to escape the pocket and run with his legs for first downs.
Okay. He did not do that at all after his calf strain until several weeks before the season ended. There was one time that I remember him running out of the pocket and trucking a linebacker and scoring a touchdown. I forget what game it was, but it was the end of last season. That because there were several games where it was like 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, and there was a wide open pocket and Dak wouldn't run. He didn't trust his ankle, calf, shoulder, whatever it was. He didn't trust it. So he was not 100% healthy. And it annoyed me because there were several times where Dak would have continued the drive, but ended up just chucking it. And it didn't really work out that well.
It's not my fault that he didn't run for the first down. It's on him for not running.
I'm not saying it's – well, if he had a calf strain coming off a broken ankle, it's 2 injuries. Are you really going to want to run and be hit?
If you're playing – I expect you to play.
Okay.
So if he had green grass and was able to jog 5 yards for a first down, he should have jogged for 5 yards and gotten the first down.
And he probably should have, but in the grand scheme of things, he did not, and he was also not 100% healthy until the end of last season. Then obviously went into the 49ers game, and the whole team played. It was a terrible game. They all played bad. The defense was bad. Everyone was bad. So, yes, going into the offseason and seeing the Buccaneers on the schedule, I was like, you know what? The team, the wide receiving core isn't all that great, but I believe they can do something. Dak played terrible. The whole team played terrible. So, excuse me for going into week 2 and not really being all that positive. But no, I'm not. I have not switched up my thoughts on Dak. Going into week 2, yes, I did believe that getting a new quarterback was the way to go because Dak had not played well and was also consistently injured. He had 3 years in a row of being injured. And when you're paying a guy that much money, I don't like bringing up the salary part, but if actually a quarterback, if he's injured for 3 years in a row on and off, and if your whole team is relying on that guy, and if he's the best ability is availability, and he was not available. So you're going to need to bring in someone who was available. Cooper Rush, 3 games. I bet you whenever Dak plays, let's say Dak goes up against the Rams, if he throws 5 picks, the game will no longer, his job will be called for. But that is the end of my rant. If Dak throws several picks, his job will be called for Cooper Rush. So, any minute mistake that Dak makes, people will be calling for Cooper Rush to take this job. Do you agree?
And the reason why they're saying that is because they are seeing the Cowboys have success with a different formula and a different quarterback. But like I said, they are seeing the quarterback score points when they absolutely need to score points. And they are winning the games, getting these game-winning drives, and they are winning. Basically, they're winning. They are winning games that the Giants game they should have won, but the Bengals game they are winning games that they should have lost. And in the Dak era, there have been a lot of games where they should have lost and they did lose. And so people see they're like, "Dang, we just beat the Bengals with the backup quarterback." What do you know? Yes, people are gonna call for Dak's job because they've seen success from another quarterback. My only question is what is your opinion on Dak Prescott? Because in week 1 you wanted him gone, but you just went on this 30-minute rant defending Dak against Cooper Rush. So him staying? So do you want Dak to stay? Do you still want Bryce Young? Do you want him gone? Where's your stance on Dak?
I want whatever you want. What I was talking about was not I was not defending him. I was just saying what I believed. It was not that I said several times. What my comments nothing to do with Dak's top 5, Dak's top 10. I was comparing a 4th round pick to a UDFA who has had a pretty vanilla offense compared to or vanilla in a good way to what Dak, or sorry, if Dak was vanilla, Cooper Rush is vanilla with sprinkles. There are little plays, little cool things that Kellen Moore has done. That was not something. The sprinkles for Cooper Rush is a double reverse for Dak that goes back 10 yards and loses all momentum. That's all that I'm saying. If Dak goes into this offense and if he stinks it up, okay, Cooper Rush, by all means, I am 100% for that. Bryce Young, sign me up. But
you've already given week 1. You gave up on Dak. So are you back on the Dak train, or do you still want him gone?
There was no train. I did not expect Kellen Moore to add this element to this offense. So as soon as Dak goes back in, he's obviously going to play. If he plays and if he succeeds, then he can play now. But I would still like to move on in the future. But if he does not play well, you can move on now and put Cooper Rush in when you're 6-7 games, and then go on. So to answer your question, Dak, I've been probably too high on him going into every year, to be honest. I like him as a player, all that stuff, but in reality, I guess you could say, if he plays, great. If not, Cooper Rush. If he plays well, cool. Still move on. If he doesn't, if he plays well, move on when his contract is over. If he doesn't play well, move on this offseason. But overall, still move on. But
okay.
my 20-minute rant, that was just
your 20-minute rant came off of me saying he has not been able to perform in a pass-heavy offense.
And what I was saying was that the only reason that they had to become a pass-heavy offense was
because they had Amari Cooper, drafted CeeDee Lamb, and had 4 or 5 wide receivers that could be successful, and they developed into a pass-heavy offense.
And then you'd know what I was going to say.
3
what I
wide
was going
receivers.
to say. Okay, no, I get what you're saying. I get it. I see 3 wide receivers. What I was saying
was 3 wide receiver ones. That's what you told me all the time. Was 3? We have 3 wide receiver ones.
Yes. Because they put up wide receiver 1 numbers. Yes, I know. So if you're gonna say something, let me just give me like 5 seconds.
I'm just trying to.
5 seconds.
You're gonna repeat yourself to me. I've already heard what you were saying. You're saying that they were doing it because they didn't have the running game to be able to lean on anymore.
And that's the reason why.
Which is fair because Frederick was gone. They brought in a new center. Tyron Smith has been in and out of the lineup for 6+ years now. Zach Martin's been the most consistent guy. And then Lyle Collins has been there, got in the car crash, was not there for a long time, all of that stuff. And that's all true. That when you don't have a good offensive line, it is a lot harder to run the ball. Yes, that is true. My point is when they paid Dak Prescott a lot of money to be to quarterback. And the quarterback's job above all is to throw the ball down the field. They went and got Amari Cooper to help their wide receiver game. Because they had to. They again went into the draft and took best player available, which was another wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb. So and then they went and they had Cedric Wilson before, drafted Michael Gallup. So at that point, you have Michael Gallup, who has not been on the field all the time because of injury, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Cedric Wilson. When you have 4 wide receivers who are all able to make plays, your offense is going to be designed to get them the football. And you're going to be throwing a lot more than you are running. And they had success doing that against bad teams, but when they played good teams, they were very predictable because teams were able to scheme for the pass first offense. They weren't able to run the ball very well, so they were easily stopped. And now what we are seeing is that when the Cowboys are able, even without a lot of wide receivers and depleted in that department, they're able to run, they're able to pass effectively from the same formation as they are running it because they are making the defense guess. And that's what they haven't been doing for a long time because they were either lining up in 5 wide or they were lining up in I formation and stacking it because they didn't have the personnel to block from 5 or 6 guys instead of 8. So that's all I'm saying. They were pass first because of their personnel. And now what they're finding is they can still pass effectively even with bad talent because they are now being a little bit more thorough in how they are game planning. And that's why it's been a blessing in disguise that they lost Dak because they are relearning that sentiment. And I'm hoping that they do not go away from that because Dak is a much better quarterback when he is not asked to throw the football a ton of times because he is not Patrick Mahomes, he's not Josh Allen, he's not Justin Herbert, he's not Joe Burrow, he's not Tom Brady.
Yeah, but even Justin Herbert throwing the ball 50 times doesn't win. You lose to the Dolphins. So if you're gonna say that if you're gonna bring up guys like Dak's not this, but Justin Herbert throwing the ball 50 times, did he win or did he lose? Did the Dolphins beat? Or sorry, for Josh Allen, did the Dolphins beat the Bills, or is that not what I saw on my TV?
The Dolphins beat the Bills because they were able to because they are more balanced and their defense made big plays in the red zone.
I must have missed that Josh Allen that throw in the dirt. I also missed the fact that the Bills had a chance to win because there was a punt that was muffed. And then you always tell me, you make that type of money. If you have a chance to win, you better make it. And I don't think Josh Allen did it. So if you're going to bring up guys like that,
he didn't.
Dak's not this.
He didn't. So he didn't win.
Okay.
Because Miami out because while the Buffalo Bills ran 45 more plays, the Dolphins maximized their plays by scoring touchdowns, whereas the Bills kicked field goals. That's why they won.
Going back to your one statement, then I'm through with what I gotta say, and then we can end it. You said that for scheming, that last time I checked, the quarterback does not make the scheme. So for you to say that stuff about like when you mentioned, I forget what the quote was, that it wasn't working, and then like this is working. Dak doesn't make the scheme, so I don't think that it's. And also the whole 4 wide receiver thing. There were several times where Dalton Schultz was out on a bootleg. There, and also with Blake Jarwin, they still had their 2 tight ends out there, even with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup and Lamb. they wanted to run the ball, and Zeke got 1,000 yards last year. That was like 1,001. And Tony Pollard didn't get a lot of rushes, but that's all I got to say. I'm sure we could probably go into more, but I don't want to go into any more rants about how Dak is this upper echelon quarterback. So, but it was a good question. It's a very good question.
Yes, it was the question was.
But thank you everyone for listening. You can find us on Twitter at America's Team, capital P, capital C. And thank you for tuning in. And after the game, or closer later in the week to the Commanders game, we will be posting a pregame to that and kind of our thoughts into that game. And we thank you for listening, and we hope that you continue to listen in the future. And Ray, anything else you want to say before we say go Cowboys?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Go Cowboys, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, let's enjoy being 2-1. Get 3-1 later.